All right, guys, get comfy, get some snacks, buckle up, whatever you need to do, because it's story time. Yesterday was actually the 5-year anniversary of the time that I flew across the country, met 15 strangers, and then proceeded to live and travel with them for the next 3 months. Let me explain. Back in 2018, I was doing what most college graduates do. I was scrolling endlessly through job postings until I saw one that, if I'm being honest, seemed too good to be true. I thought it was a scam. I was fully convinced it was a scam, but I got on the plane anyway, which says a lot about me as a person. I applied, interviewed, and accepted a fellowship position working for the National History Bee, which is an academic competition based around history for middle school age children across the United States. Not unlike the spelling bee, where you have all the regional competitions and then you qualify for the big show at nationals. Same format, just history based. The tagline on the job posting had said something like, "Are you ready for an adventure? Do you want to get paid to travel?" I was like, duh, that is my dream job. Then it said something like, "Do you want to work with children?" And I went, I weighed the pros and cons. I applied anyway. I got the job. I worked with middle school children for 3 months, but all of that was completely worth it to get to travel to 42 out of 50 US states. During my interviews, I kept thinking, what on earth is the catch here? What scam are they running? This cannot be real. And then they bought me a plane ticket to LA. I was like, well, I'm going. Scam or not, I'm going. Then they sent out a list of the other people who were crazy enough to go on this adventure with me. And I said, okay, well, I'm not the only one getting scammed, I guess. Then they sent out the list of the 40 regional events that we'd be running, and I thought, oh crap, it's real. It's actually real. The job itself was simple and repetitive. We would go into a school, we would set up classrooms and testing areas, we would run buzzer rounds, we would sell merch, and we would give out awards. And if you were me and my counterpart Kat, you would give the opening ceremonies, which included rules, the schedule of events for the day, to hundreds of antsy middle schoolers and their parents. Just because the job was simple does not mean it wasn't chaotic and stressful at times. You're dealing with hundreds of middle schoolers all at once. About as much human error as possible happened a lot of the time. We ran behind, kids ended up in the wrong classrooms, kids got lost. We always found them, but they did get lost sometimes. We had angry parents, you name it, we dealt with it. But honestly, I loved it. If we weren't at an event, we were free to do whatever we wanted, go wherever we wanted, in whatever state we happened to be in at that time. And we did it very stylishly in our rented minivans. Yes, I traveled the country with a fleet of minivans. This is where the real fun begins though. The events were our job, we took them seriously, we were very good at it, but the adventure is everything else in between. I obviously can't tell you all the stories. I would need the entire Lord of the Rings extended edition trilogy to get through all the stories. But I have picked out some of my favorites, and if you guys ever want a part 2, I'd be more than happy to make it for you. These won't really be in chronological order, other than I'll save my story of the last night on the trip for last. Other than that, we're gonna bounce around as they come into my head. Did you know I've only ever been kicked out of one bar in my lifetime? I was completely happy to never have been kicked out of a bar, but my boss got me kicked out of a bar in Nashville. And that brings us to our first story. Put a group of 15, 20-somethings on the road together in some of the biggest party cities in the country, there's bound to be some drinking. Some of us more than others, but there's bound to be some drinking. It was March, we were celebrating a birthday, and we all went out together on Broadway in Nashville. Recipe for disaster. At one point in the night, we were all kind of separating to do our own things. A group went back to the hotel because they all needed to lay down. Shocker. Another group went to a different bar where there was a dance floor, and Derek and I ended up alone in a bar trying to hear a fiddle player play The Devil Went Down to Georgia. This bar is one of the smaller bars along Broadway. I wish for the life of me that I could remember the name, but it is like floor to ceiling windows all around. It was pretty, it was small, it was a little bit quieter than some of the other bars, and we just wanted to hear some live music. We grabbed a table right along one of the windows, and unbeknownst to us, our boss had been turned away from a bar up the way a little bit for being too intoxicated. Like, they would not let him into the bar. He then came walking back down Broadway, saw us at our table, and decided to try to get into the bar we were in. The door guy there also turned him away. He, being intoxicated, obviously didn't like that answer. So he came around to the window outside of our table and started banging on the window, trying to get our attention. And we are doing our best to, like, just listen to the fiddle player. Just listen to the fiddle player pounding on the windows, and we are mortified. I'm like, I just want to hear this fiddle player play The Devil Went Down to Georgia. We just want to hear the song. And the bouncer ends up coming over and being like, do you know that guy? And we were like, no, 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 we do not. He's going, Derek, Darby, and I'm like, oh, No. The bouncer, of course, said, sorry guys, but you gotta go. We're doing nothing wrong, but because our boss is acting like a buffoon, we got kicked out of a bar. While I'm on the subject of intoxication, I will tell one more story about a team member being drunk, and then we will move on to happier subjects. This next story is about a booze cruise we all took in Miami, and it's not for the squeamish. Maybe skip over this one if you don't like bodily fluids. About once a month while we were on the road, the company would pay for us to do one big group bonding activity. We did axe throwing at one point, we did top golf at one point, but when we were in Miami, we decided to do a booze cruise. I knew that was a bad idea from the get-go, but who am I to object? Again, you put 15, 20-somethings together, this time on a boat. It's a recipe for some sort of disaster to happen. I had luckily volunteered to be one of the designated drivers that night, and at the beginning I had one Seagram's escape, and then I sat back and I watched the world burn. I don't know what I was expecting when I heard my boss say booze cruise, but it wasn't a pontoon boat with a cooler at each end. Other than the taking on water bit anytime a boat would pass us in the harbor, it was a great time. Really amazing views of the skyline. We brought our own speaker and got to play our own music. It was all great. Everyone's having a good time. As always, there is someone who doesn't know their limits though, and that is where we run into trouble. One of the guys who wasn't a big drinker ended up drinking too much. I saw it early on, I knew it was gonna be bad. And it is kind of important to the story to mention that he was a big guy. We come back in, we dock, we're all trying to get off the boat. And I will admit that with boats coming in and out, it's not the easiest thing because you're going up and down. But I can tell that this guy is a little shaky. I was like, I sense trouble coming. This is not gonna be good. To his credit, he gets off the boat and onto the dock. He takes 2 very shaky steps in my direction and then starts falling forward, directly at me. And what did I do? Did I put out my hands to catch him? No, I did not. I sidestepped right out of the way and let him hit his face on the dock. Does that make me a bad person? Potentially. Does it make me uninjured? Yes, absolutely. At this point, people are like looking at me like, Darby. And I'm like, what? What did you want me to do about that? That was a tree trunk coming for a squirrel. I had to get out of the way. Self-preservation, baby. That was strike 1 for him in the night, but very far from his last strike. We eventually get him up off the dock and we all walk back to the parking garage where our 4 minivans are parked. As we're dividing up who gets in what van, it's decided that some of the less drunk people want to go out to another bar down in Miami, which is understandable. I volunteered to be a designated driver, so I'm like, I will take people back to the hotel. Anyone else who didn't want to go to the next bar came with me. Here are some important things to note. We're in a minivan. It's 3 rows. It's also winter, but kind of warm because it's Miami. So the windows are open, okay? If you can see where this is going, I'm so sorry, but you're gonna have to hear it anyway. Here's how the seating chart went. I'm in the driver's seat. Hannah is riding shotgun. We have a guy in the back who's pretty much sober, trying to help with the drunk guy. Drunk guy's behind me. And then we have a girl in the back and then Reagan. So me, drunk guy, Reagan. This is the important side to note. Me, drunk guy, Reagan. He obviously doesn't look all that good. It's not that far to the hotel though. I'm like, it's fine. We get on the highway. I am on a 4-lane highway in Miami, so there's plenty of cars. And he's complaining that he doesn't feel good, and I'm like, it's okay, we're almost there, don't worry about it. We were not almost there, but we were getting closer every moment. I'm like, just hang on. He apparently could not hang on because shortly after, I hear screaming coming from the back row. Deadly, blood-curdling shrieks. And I'm driving, I'm like, what is going on? He had, while we were going about 65 miles an hour down a highway, thrown up out the window of the minivan. We were going so fast that it came back in the back window and hit the girls. Reagan took the brunt of it and she is screaming, pull over. And I'm like, I'm on a 4-lane highway and I was in the 2nd lane from the left. I'm like, I can't pull over right now. And I'm like, I'm trying, I'm merging traffic. There's just chaos ensuing around me. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm gonna get off. There's an exit, I'm getting off right now. We pull over in a 7-Eleven parking lot and I've never seen 2 girls hurdle 2 grown men, hop out of a minivan faster and into the 7-Eleven. They're in the bathroom splashing water and soap on their face. They're asking me to go buy them Clorox wipes. And I'm like, oh, to clean the van. They're like, no, to clean our skin. I'm like, we have the sober guy out there trying to wipe down the drunk guy, get him out of his soiled clothes in a 7-Eleven parking lot. No one let that guy live that down for the rest of the trip. We had to pretend the van was having mechanical issues, turn it back into the rental company and get a new one because the van smelled like vomit. And I have never in my life been so glad to be the designated driver. Alrighty, we're done with drunk stories. On to happier topics. This next one really isn't a story, but a favorite memory from the trip. While we were in Savannah, Georgia, we canceled all of our hotel rooms and booked one of those big, beautiful, historic townhomes right off of one of the squares. It's one of those stays that I never would have paid to stay in unless I had a group of like 15 people splitting it with me. So that was really cool in and of itself. But I had a full kitchen for the first time the entire trip. So I got to cook this big family meal for everyone, and we got to eat together sitting in a dining room. It was a really cool moment to just have everyone together, because most of the time, the only time the whole group was together was those like set bonding activities and at events. Because everyone rode around in their own separate vans. You had your own separate rooms you stayed in. It's often hard to get into a restaurant with 15 people, and we had a lot of different dietary restrictions. So like to be able to sit down and just have like a family meal together, it was one of my favorite memories, and I got to cook for everyone, and food is my love language, so it was just a really amazing day. It was a lot of really long travel days, a lot of late nights because it's a bunch of 20-somethings who don't go to bed at a decent hour, some early mornings. It was bound to happen that some people were burnt out at certain times where they didn't want to go out and go exploring. I can't pretend I never felt that burnoutness where I just wanted to like stay in the hotel and take a nap, but I tried to push through as much as possible. One of those days comes to mind when we were in Kansas. Not Kansas City, Kansas, no. Rural, middle of nowhere, Kansas. And we looked up what there was to do, and it was a lot of little like touristy attractions and oddities. And a group of us had decided that we were gonna go and try to hit as many of them as possible. Well, when the day rolls around, no one wants to get up early. It's raining, no one wants to go anywhere. Everyone wants to stay in the hotel and take a nap. Everyone except me and Reagan. We checked the forecast, the rain wasn't supposed to last very long, and we decided we were going anyway, just the two of us. We spent the entire day driving around what feels like the entire state of Kansas to see as many of these oddities and little tourist attractions as we could. And honestly, it was one of my favorite days. There's a town in Kansas that has its own yellow brick road. So of course we had to see it and say, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore, and take all these cute pictures, clicking our heels together like we were Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. We got to drive on a portion of Route 66 and play Life is a Highway from the Cars soundtrack while we were on our way to a roadside attraction that has life-size replicas of all the Cars movie characters. We saw the world's largest ball of twine. We passed Sam and Dean Winchester's hometown from Supernatural. We played a lot of Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas. And we saw the world's largest check egg. I had no idea how many roadside attraction and oddities Kansas had, but I feel like I got to see pretty much all of them in one day, and it was a really great day. If you know me, you know I like all things creepy and spooky and ghostly. So one of my favorite nights is we took a detour on Friday the 13th at night to Salem, Massachusetts. We had been running an event outside of Boston that day, and it was Friday the 13th, and Salem wasn't that far of a drive, and a group of us decided we have to go. We're so close, and it's Friday the 13th. How do you pass that up? We saw Max's house from Hocus Pocus. We got to see a lot of different cemeteries. That's the night I took the picture where it looks like I'm getting stuck in a tree. That was Friday the 13th in a cemetery in Salem, Massachusetts. There are about a million more stories I could tell you from this trip, but I don't want to make the video too long because I don't want to assume how long anyone's attention span is, okay? I will leave you with the story of the last night of my 3-month adventure. At this point, we were all understandably exhausted, a little burnt out, kind of ready to go home and sleep in our own beds, but we were also so incredibly sad. It was such a bittersweet moment because these 15 strangers had truly become a second family to me. Each and every one of them shaped a part of who I am today. I would not be who I am without all of them. So we were naturally trying to spend as much time together as possible. And I had the bright idea. I said, let's just never go to bed. Let's just not go to bed. Let's spend this whole night together, and we will go watch the sunrise together somewhere. Our last destination for the trip was Washington, D.C. So I have the bright idea, let's watch the sunrise over the Washington Monument from the Lincoln Memorial. I said, think about the color, the reflecting pool, it's gonna be gorgeous, and what a better, more movie-like, picturesque way to end the 3-month adventure of a lifetime. I completely understood when most of the people said, Darby, you are absolutely insane. I could fall asleep standing up right now. I'm not staying up straight through the night before I have to catch a flight home the next day. I said, couldn't be me though. I run on caffeine, adrenaline, and fairy dust. I will stay up. 5 of us agreed to stay up straight through the night and just hang out in a hotel room together. Another 3 people agreed to come with us, but they said you have to wake us up. We're gonna go to bed for a couple hours, wake us up, and we'll all drive down there together. How many people do you think ended up actually watching the sunrise? The answer is 3. Me, Reagan, and our friend Brendan are the only ones that made it. And I'll tell you why we made it. The sleep was trying to pull us under. The beds were the comfiest we'd had on the whole trip. The sleep was coming for us, and I fought it. I fought it hard. I said, I will not sit on that bed. I will sit on this floor and make myself as uncomfortable as possible. The problem is, I'm a floor person. It actually ended up being wildly comfortable for me. So I'm getting up, I'm pacing around, we're putting on comedy specials and action movies and anything with really loud sound to try to keep us awake. We're playing games, we're talking to people, we're writing our farewell letters, we're doing everything we can. And eventually I just like slowly leaned over and I set my head down and I said, no, we have to go right now. It was definitely an hour and a half before sunrise was even gonna happen, but I said, anyone who's still awake, get in the car. We're gonna try to rouse the other people. We have to go now or I will fall asleep. Reagan's still awake, Brendan's still awake. The other two in the room, fallen asleep, they said, we're not going. Do not wake us up, we're not going. We called and called and called the people who claimed, oh, we're gonna sleep for a couple hours, but wake us up. Three of us ended up going. We took a minivan, we drove ourselves down there. It was very cold, but the cold helped wake us up. And once you were outside, you're like, okay, I'm moving, I can stay awake, I can power through. We ended up sitting on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and watching the sunrise over the Washington Monument. Anyway, it was just a perfect moment, and those are so rare, and it was just the most wonderful way to end the adventure of a lifetime that I had just been on. Alrighty, I will stop there before I get even more sentimental or keep you there for even longer. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. If you have any more questions about the History Bee, the events, what states we went to, what states we didn't go to, more stories, please let me know in the comments. I will answer anything or tell any more stories that you'd like to hear. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe below, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.